Zach Abdel Sayed. I just want to welcome him. He's not a stranger to at least a few of us, especially myself. Folks, this is my former head elder in the Windsor Seventh-day Adventist Church. I've had personally a chance to work with Zach for a few years. I know he doesn't feel comfortable when I introduce him, so I'm not going to say nothing, okay? I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to let him speak for himself, but God has used Zach. So the first question I have for you, how did you end up with such an awesome name as Zach Abdel Sayed? Tell us a bit about your background.
Names in the Middle East are mostly either a Christian name or a Muslim name. If you come from the Muslim faith, you'll get a Muslim name. And if you're from the Christian faith, then it is a Christian faith. If you're a Muslim, you probably will end up with a name like Muhammad, Ahmed, Mahmoud, Ali, Mustafa, any of this. If you're a Christian, you are given a Christian name. So basically, when you meet anyone in the Middle East, the minute they give you your name, it identifies the person's religion. So Christians will have a name like Mark, John, any biblical name. So the first name is biblical, which is Zechariah, which is a biblical name. That's the father of John. The last name is a combination of two words. Abd is Sayyid. Abd, it means the servant, and Sayyid means the Lord. So it is still religious in connotation. So Abd Sayyid means the servant of the Lord. The minute any Muslim will hear that, will identify, except in my case, it could be either Muslim or Christians. So it's a way of disguising your religious identity. So the first one will reveal you. The second one will be an affirmation of your religious affiliation. A lot of people nowadays would have a name that can go either way. And my name is the same. It could be a Muslim, it could be a Christian. So that has to do with the name.
Now, how, where, and how long ago have you met Esther? And the following question with that is, what's the secret to a happy marriage? Because I always seen you and Esther together. And even here on the Zoom, we can see Esther there helping you. And
well, I'm glad you mentioned Queen Esther, otherwise I'll be in trouble. She is the queen of the house. She's a gift from God, actually, and I keep repeating that. A lovely lady. I couldn't have asked for a better person to spend my long life with. We met actually at the Middle East College. Both of us attended Middle East College, which is in Beirut, Lebanon. Both of us are Egyptians. Her family, her father, was a minister of the Adventist Church, and her grandfather is the first Seventh-day Adventist in Egypt. And his story I documented in the first book, Egyptian Odyssey, how he managed to find the truth about the Sabbath on his own and managed to contact George Keogh, who was a missionary, and that's how Adventism started in Egypt. So the first book was written with that in mind, to give the history of Adventism in Egypt. So she comes from that family, the Nashid family. We met in Middle East College. I graduated before her, but we had made commitment when we were together going to college. that when she's done, we'll get married, and that's what happened. As for the longevity of this marriage, yes, we have been married over 50 years now, and we thank God for that. We have 2 boys.
Amen.
And in the book that some of you got a copy of it, I actually answered this question. This is found in page 203. So whatever I'm sharing now, just briefly to answer the question, they are listed down in page 202 and 203. So allow me to just read it from the book as I stated it 3 years ago in Egyptian Odyssey. Number 1, we promise each other we will accept and respect one another. I don't want her to be me, and I don't want to be her. We're 2 individuals created by God. So it says we will accept and respect each other without anyone attempting to change the other. That's number 1. Zach is going to say Zach. Esther is going to be Esther. We're 2 individuals living together. Number 2, it says in the book, we will live debt-free. We will not buy any item by borrowing money. When we need it, we will wait until we have cash to buy it. That's something unusual for a couple living in North America, because North America usually you buy on credit, you buy on card, and you enjoy it, and then you spend your life to say it. We said when we have the money and we feel absolutely in need of the item, we will buy it, but we're not buying it on credit. Later on, we modified that. We will use a credit card, but we will pay in full monthly. In fact, sometimes before even the end of the month, we pay the credit, the amount on the car, so we don't have to incur interest. Number 3, for healthy and happy marriage, we will spend quality time every day together. Another way, we make sure we walk together daily, talk to each other for an hour or 2. Sometimes our conversation can go for 3-4 hours, but nobody in between. Number 4, we will guard the secret of the marriage. What goes between us is nobody's business. Basically, it is, we feel strongly about that. Brothers, sisters, friends, even ministers, we don't want our secrets to be made public. Number 5 or 6, we will guard the secret of our marriage. As I said, whatever goes between us, we will try to go to bed every night praying together, and we have resolved any issue that had taken or arose during the day. If we have a disagreement, we will solve that before we go to bed. We will pray together morning and evening, have a morning and evening devotion. We will have 2 children. We decided on that to start, no more. And we decided also that Esther will stay home until the boys, it happened to be 2 boys, finish high school. So she's home when they come back from school. And that's what happened. We feel that some of these were of great help to us, that now we have been married for over 50 years. So it's not a secret, it's written in the books. That's why I'm sharing it with you.
Thank you. Wow, Zach, I'm glad I asked you that question, because I'm sure that, couples are listening, and even this video on the YouTube, whoever is watching us will take it to heart to remember these wonderful lessons, lessons of from the wisdom that you have acquired over more than 50 years of being married together. And folks, you've heard that Zach quoted his book, and Zach was able to author in the last several years at least 2 books. He's working on the 3rd one. Perhaps there is even more, I'm not sure, but so far I know of 2 books. Some of you received a copy of that book. But Zach, the final question for you before you have a little presentation for us, and before we pray for you, is what is the reason? What prompted you to write books? Tell us what inspired you, and what is the subject of these books? And I'm glad that you sharing your life. Seems in your first book you're talking about your marriage, the lessons. But what inspired you to write all these books, and what are they all about?
Well, actually, I wrote and published 2 books in English and 1 in Arabic. The Arabic was basically in great need because we want our people to use it as a missionary book. They asked me that there are interest in Christianity, especially after the revolution, and we don't have anything in Arabic that will address that. So I wrote 1 in Arabic. The other 2 that were published are in English. I referred to 1, an Egyptian Odyssey, in which I send you, I think, about 10 or a dozen copies of it for your church. The Egyptian Odyssey, the initial reason why I had to write it was to state clearly and accurately the story of Adventism in Egypt. We didn't have any account, no books were written about how Adventism entered Egypt. And because of that, I enlarged it to speak about Christianity, the history of Christianity in Egypt, and then the history of Protestant faith in Egypt, and the history of Adventism in Egypt. And it ended with the product of the schools that the Adventists built in Egypt was Zach. I went to an Adventist school. If it weren't for that school, Zach would not have been an Adventist, basically, because my parents are not Adventists. My parents are Coptic, Orthodox. So it was the school that enabled me to see the light, if I may use that, and become a Seventh-day Adventist. So the first book is basically the history of Christianity and the history of Adventism in Egypt. The second book, published 2 years ago, was a subject that of great interest to me, and I gave 2 sermons, and then everybody started asking me, we need that to be in a book. Why don't you write a book about the subject? And that is the freedom of choice. It's called God's Red Line. And it was a blessing to our people and many people that have read it. The third book, which is only a draft now, and I have asked Pastor Kosovan to read it, and he accepted very graciously today to read that draft, is a book that I wanted to write for many years, and I had a chance to write it because I had plenty of time during the pandemic. Didn't know what to do with my time. So I said, this is the time to write. So I started writing it a year and a half ago, and it was finished about a month or 2 ago. And the title of it is Egypt, the cradle of Judaism, meaning everything that was written by Moses, the Old Testament, and even some of the New Testament, was influenced by Egypt, because Moses, the writer of the 5 books we call the Torah, he was born in Egypt, raised in Egypt, went to schools in Egypt. Even when they left from Goshen, which is the Delta, and went to Sinai, where all the God giving the 10 Commandments and everything, they were still in Egypt, because Sinai has been always part of Egypt. So when we say the Jews left Egypt to Sinai, it's just moving from British Columbia to Alberta. They were still in Egypt. So everything that they received about the 10 Commandments and all the other instructions given by Moses, the health laws and the rest of it, was still given when the people were camping in Sinai, which is part of Egypt. So the title, Egypt is the cradle of Judaism. It means that Egypt had influenced Judaism in a very direct way.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Thank you so much for answering our 3 questions. And folks, if you want to definitely connect more with Zach, feel free to reach out for his contact information. He'll be able to tell you more about his books. And we also plan to bring Zach here to Victoria, God willing, hopefully this year, so he can come and do the presentation regarding Egypt and how the Bible connects with the story about, from Joseph to even Jesus. And it's been fascinating to always sit down at the feet of Zach and listen to these amazing, how should I say, even cultural understandings that Zach has, because he grew up in Egypt.
God's intervention in my life is countless, many times. And each one of these interventions in my life, I consider it to be a miracle, because that's what a miracle is, really, God intervening in our life. Esther and I value the friendship we have. You are dear friends to us. We have many friends, and one of them is Pastor Kosovan, or Dr. Kosovan, and his family. We traveled together, as he said. He was like a brother to me, and still a brother. We also know a few other members, and I remember falling in love. Both of us fell in love with Victoria 15 years ago, when I was a regional director for a retirement homes, holiday retirement, owned by a Seventh-day Adventist. And I had the chance to open a community there in Victoria called the Victorians at the Mackenzie. Was one building that I had, and Canada was my region. So I know the place. In fact, for a while we were thinking of retiring in Victoria, but we found it to be very expensive. It's a lovely place with lovely people. I'd like to share with you today one of the many miracles that God had done in my life. They're all recorded in the book. If you have that copy, you will find them in the last chapter, chapter 8. You find 4 miracles I chose from the many miracles, and I put them in the book. Now, miracles happens under 3 conditions. So I like to start with that. When I speak about miracles, it means God intervening in our life, and there are 3 prerequisites or conditions for God to perform a miracle in your life or my life. Let me share the 3 of them. Number 1, miracles happen when we are in a tight position case, when you find yourself with no outlet, you're stuck another way. It is when we are in difficulty, God comes to the rescue. This is biblical. For example, when the Hebrews found themselves facing the sea from front and the big mighty army of the Egyptians at the back, they were in a tight position. It is then that God came to the rescue. Number two, miracles happen when we truly believe that God is able. We have to come to realize that God is able to find a way out of the situation. And number three, miracles happen also when we as individuals try to do our part, the small part. We have to make an effort. We don't sit down and say God is going to perform a miracle. So basically, God has the big part. We have a very small part to do, that is to do our effort in solving a situation or getting out of a difficult situation. So these are the three things. You're going to see these highlighted in my experience that I'm going to share with you today, one of the four that are mentioned in the book. Okay, so out of the four, I chose one. It has to do with 3 visas, the title of it, 3 visas in 1 hour. That's the title that I gave in chapter 8 of the book. 3 visas in 1 hour. The year was 1963. That's way back before most of you were born. I was attending a college, Adventist college called Middle East College. The first year at Middle East College was very difficult and tough. I had no money to pay the tuition. I had no money to spend on the necessities of life. My parents could not pay the tuition because it's too hefty, too large amount of money. My father's salary would not even pay for 1/4, and that was needed to support the big family. So basically, I found myself in need of money, but I was at the college. So I worked very hard the first year. I worked day and night. During the day, I worked at the wood shop. They had a workshop and they gave me enough hours. And at night, from 11 o'clock, after I did all my homework, I had to go to the bakery, which they had, and I made cinnamon rolls from midnight about 4 in the morning. And 4 till 7 o'clock, that was all the sleep I had. But I had to earn money by working day and night. It was really a very hard year. So at the end of the school year, I decided that I need to do something basically during the summer to earn enough money so that I can pay my full tuition the following year, or part of it, or most of it, so I don't have to work day and night and weekends. So I teamed with a friend, and this is what was recorded also in the book. Again, I say that. His name is Farouk Rizk. He became a minister later on in Egypt, and he retired a few years ago. We decided, both of us, we will go to a place, a country called Kuwait. This is on the Persian Gulf. And we decided to go there to be corporators, selling our books. And nobody had gone to that place before, so we were pioneers. There were only 2 Seventh-day Adventists in the whole country at that time. So we decided to go and be pioneers selling books in Kuwait. So that is the beginning of the miracle. We were ready to go. We had to do something. We were ready to willingly to go and put an offer. So we inquired about how to enter Kuwait, which they just discovered oil at that time. And we got to know that you need 3 visas to enter Kuwait. One is an entry visa. It's like going from the States to Canada or Canada to Mexico. You have to have a visa if you are not a resident. And they need a work visa because we told them we're going to go and sell books. And then they asked what kind of books. We told them health books. So they said you need a 3rd visa. So we needed 3 visas to enter to sell our books. One is entry visa. The second is work visa because we're going to work for summer. And then because we're selling health books and they didn't know what kind of health books, they said you need 3 visas. While we inquired how long would it take to get the 3 visas required, they said it's about from 3 to 6 months. Well, we only had 2 weeks and we need to spend the whole summer there working. So it doesn't make sense to wait 6 months. 6 months we'll be in college. So we made a decision that to everybody was a foolish decision. And that is to go to the border of Kuwait from Lebanon. We travel through Syria and then Iraq and then go to Kuwait, 22 hours by bus, and see if they allow us to enter without a visa. You probably thought that's what foolishness, and you are right. We were like acting like fools to go to a border, travel by bus 22 hours with the hope of they will let you in. So basically, we took the books. We took 300 copies of 3 books. And we took the bus and we drove through the Arabian desert. It was like basically unbelievably hot. The bus was not air conditioned. It was June. So the temperature was 55 Celsius, which is 120, 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 20 hours as though you are really on fire. But we made it to the border. And at the border, everybody had to get out of the bus and then lined up. So we did. And basically, they started investigating one by one. You show your passport, and then you show you have a visa and the passport. And then they ask a lot of questions about what you have. In our case, we have the books. So we told them we have books. Said, what kind of books? We told them 3 books. One is the Bedtime Stories by Arthur Maxwell, translated in Arabic. And another book called Your Cigarettes, How to Quit Smoking. And then a 3rd book was the Modern Medical Book, which is a book about how to treat yourself and medicine and drugs and so on. And we took 300 from each of these with us. So we told them what we have, and then said, where is your passport? So we gave him the passport, and they looked at the passport, is valid. And then they started asking questions. What's the purpose of the visit? We told them to sell these books. How long are you going to stay? The whole summer. Whom do you know in Kuwait? Nobody. We don't know any friends, no relatives. And then they finally asked, where are the visas? one, to work, second, to sell these books that are health books, and you are entering the country. I said, we don't have visas. So the officer right away said, no visas, no entry. We couldn't convince him otherwise. He said, young man, you heard it. No visas, no entry. Now, what you need to do is to go back, board the bus, and go home. So I said, I really can't do that. We cannot. We don't have money to go back. Could we talk to your supervisor? They said, well, if you want to talk to my supervisor, I'll get you my supervisor. So the supervisor showed up. You could tell he was a kind, helpful man, soft-spoken, pleasant. So he asked the same questions. And then he asked the dreaded question, where are your visas? I said, we don't have visas. He said, well, no visas, no entry. Same answer. At that point, I uttered words that I don't think they were mine. Words that made no sense whatsoever to the supervisor. And I wrote in the book the words as I remember them. I said, sir, that's to the supervisor, we are financially broke. We don't have money to go back. We have no money to go back. If you allow us to enter Kuwait, and you give us 24 hours, we will come back with 3 visas that you require. I hope you heard me for that, because that's the key words. Allow us to enter the country and allow us 24 hours. We will obtain 3 visas so that we enter legally. Now, that is kind of fishy. So he right away answered by said, and what guarantee do I have that you will come back to the border? And it was then that I said, we will leave the books, they were all in boxes, right in your office. That will guarantee that we have to come back. If we don't obtain the visas, we need the books. There are a lot of money. He kind of took that as a challenge. He said, young man, he was talking to me, you know what? You're challenging me. You will never get 3 visas in 24 hours. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to allow you, although we don't do that. You can go. So I said, okay. So I went back to the bus. Everybody was already checked in, and the bus started driving toward Kuwait City. So we arrived Kuwait after 2 hours from the border. It was around noon, and the streets were completely deserted. I said, where are the people? So I started asking. He said, well, this is siesta, something like the Mexicans. When it's very hot, the temperature was 130 degrees. The people leave around noon and take a siesta and come back for a second session of work at 4 o'clock. And we arrived around noon, so everybody had gone home. So the streets were empty. We looked. The bus dropped us in the main square of Kuwait City, and there was a white building with a flag, Kuwaiti flag, flying on the top of the building. I looked and I could read, it says, the Ministry of Health. And I right away, with my friend Farouk, dashed toward the building. and we saw two guards at the door, the main door. We greeted them, and by the time they answered the question, we said, Salamu alaikum. And they basically, we could hear them trying to say the same thing, but we were halfway through the stairs going up. There was an elevator, but we didn't want to wait for it to come and we take it up. We just dashed into the building and jumping like rabbits going to the first floor. The two guards got up with the gun drawn, shouting, stop or we'll shoot. By the time they made it to the first floor, we were up there already. And I looked, and to the right, there was a plaque, gold plaque on the wall. And it says, Minister of Health. I said, that's one person we need. So basically, we knocked at the door and we entered. By the time we entered and we were right there facing the minister was sitting behind his desk. The two officers that saw us at the door and his own officers that were guarding his office, four of them dashed into the office and their guns are drawn. I had already started my selling pitch, talking to the minister, who did not even lift his head up. He was listening to what I'm saying. And when these guards marched into his office, he just motioned to them, said, it's all right, you can leave. So he ordered these people to leave the office, and he started listening to me. And I was telling him, we're two students, we went to college, and we are here to sell books so we can earn some money and give the tuition. A speech that we say it to everybody. And he started laughing. And I said, I didn't know why he's laughing. So I said, sir, did I say something to make you laugh? He said, no, but you're a joke. I said, in what way I am a joke? He said, what you're telling me here will not work in Kuwait. And he started talking. So I started to listen to him carefully, and his accent was somehow familiar to me. It's not a Kuwaiti accent. It is an Egyptian accent. I wanted to ask him, but I was afraid to ask him, are you a Kuwaiti or an Egyptian? He seemed to read my mind. So he said, you want to ask a question, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, well, I know the question. I said, how do you know? He said, I read your mind. I said, then what's the question? It became, we're talking like friend to friend. He said, you want to ask if I am a Kuwaiti citizen or I'm Egyptian? I said, well, I thought maybe you're Kuwaiti, but you took your education in Egypt, because Egypt is the center of education in the Middle East, so many universities, and a lot of Kuwaitis used to go to Egypt for their higher education. And I know he's a doctor because it says doctor there. I said, actually, I'm not Kuwaiti. I said, you're Egyptian? He said, yeah, I'm Egyptian. I said, I'm Egyptian too. He said, I know that. The minute you open your mouth, I knew that you're Egyptian because it's the same dialect. He said, sit down. So we sat down. And then he reached for a buzzer, rang his secretary, private secretary, and asked him to bring some refreshment. And he said, and bring some dessert. It's almost like he read our minds. We were hungry by then, didn't eat the whole day. thirsty because it was hot. So the secretary comes back with a tray full of goodies. I was thirsty, I just reached for it, and then there were pastries and fruits. And he said, enjoy yourself, then we can talk. I said, no, I'm all right. I'm ready. He said, so you're going to sell books? I said, yes. And said, how are you going to do it? I said, we'll go from home to home. He said, in Kuwait? I said, yeah, that's what we do in Egypt. He said, you're not in Egypt. You are in Kuwait. If you go and ring a bell and a wife of a person shows up at the door and he knows you talk to his wife, you're done. You don't do that in Kuwait. I said, so how do we go about selling books? He said, well, let's discuss the strategy first. In order for you to sell books, you have to have a permit. I said, yeah, we need a visa. In fact, at the border, they asked us to bring 3 visas. He said, what are the 3 visas? I said, a visa from the Minister of Health, which is you, thank God we're here, and a visa to enter the country, and visa to work all summer. And said, how are you getting that? I said, I don't know. So he started laughing. He said, okay, don't worry. I'm Egyptians. You both are Egyptians. I like what you're doing. I did it when I was a student. I finished my education in Cairo, Egypt, and then I went to the United States. And in order to support myself, like what you're trying to do, to earn an education, I worked in the kitchen, washing dishes. So I admire what you're doing, and I want to help you. I said, thank you. How do we get 3 visas? He said, where is your passport? So I took the 2 passports and I gave them to him. So he reached for his stamps and he stamped my passport. He said, that's a visa from the Ministry of Health. I saw the books that you gave me. I had given him a copy of the book, medical book, and he discovered that 3 of his professors at Cairo University wrote articles in the book. And he was impressed. He said, here is the first visa. So I had the courage to say, how do I get the other 2 visas now? He said, no problem. So he rang his secretary came in and he said, take these 2 passports, and I wanted to go to the Interior Ministry and to the Ministry, now he's the Ministry of Health, Interior Ministry now, and the Ministry of Labor. Showed him my visa in the passport. He had already stamped the 2 passports, showed him that I had already approved these people to sell these books, and asked them to give each one of them a visa. And I wanted to do that in less than an hour. Can you do it? He said, yes, sir. He said, okay. So we gave him the passport and they took the passport and we started talking to him, friendly talk. He said, I'm going to help you. I said, yeah, we need your help. He said, you're not going to go from house to house. It's not going to work here. So I said, what do we do? He said, okay. So he picked up his phone and dialed the number, and we could hear him talking to somebody. And this is what he said. He said to the person that we remember, he's a Muslim person, and he got to know we are Christians, but he was kind enough. He said to the person on the other side of the line, I am sending to you tomorrow two young people. The first one is Zachariah, and the second one is Farouk. So he gave our name. They have 3 books that I believe will be of great value to all the nurses and the doctors in the hospital. In fact, I recommend the 3 books as a general reading for all hospital employees. And he was talking to the administrator of the biggest hospital in Kuwait, called Sabah General Hospital. It's a huge hospital, modern too. So the administrator, we could hear him telling him, yes, sir. So he said to us, I spoke to the administrator of the hospital, Sabah Hospital, and I'm going to call the second hospital in the city. I'll give them the same instructions, and that's where you go. You don't go from home to home. You go to the hospitals, and I recommended that the people in the hospitals will get a copy from your book. We couldn't believe what was happening. In less than an hour, his private secretary came back with our passport, crowned with 3 visas that they require at the border. We thanked the kind Minister of Health. We tried to give him a set of books that we were carrying. He refused to take it unless he pays the money. We tried and tried, please take it as a way of appreciating what you have done. He said, no, I buy them like anybody else. Finally, we convinced him to take it. While we finished from the Minister of Health, and directly we took a taxi to the hospital, Sabah Hospital, which is a huge complex. We arrived and we asked for the administrator by name. He had given us the name. They ushered us into his office. He was waiting. He knew that we were coming. He was very kind. Again, a Muslim, like the Minister of Health was a Muslim, and asked us to sit down, order refreshment. And he said, I got the message from the minister. I know why you're here. You have books. You want to sell? I said, yes. So he went on the PA system of the hospital, and we could hear him talking. And what he said was music to our ear. He asked all the workers, doctors, nurses, administrators, anyone that has an office in the hospital to assemble at the auditorium, a huge auditorium. He said, I want everyone to come within 10 minutes. The only ones that were excluded are the people at the emergency department. So we sat there waiting for them, and they started coming, doctors and nurses and accountants and people there. We counted almost 300. He knew how many. There were 350 individuals assembled in the auditorium. And then he stood up and introduced us, myself and my partner. And he said, Zachariah has a brief speech to give. So I took his place on the platform, gave my pitch, and I told him about the 3 books. And I didn't tell them about the price. He told me, don't give the price. Just talk about why you're here, what are the books all about, and why you and your friend are doing that. So we told them that we're students and we're doing that in order to earn a scholarship because we were going to university. and the 3 books. I finished my brief speech. He stood up again and addressed the whole audience. He said, the Minister of Health had recommended that every one of you should read these books. They are very helpful. That's coming from the Minister of Health to doctors, nurses, and employee of the hospital. And he was so smart. He said, you don't have to pay for them today. We will deduct from you, from your salary at the end of the month, 5 dinars. And then he ended his speech by saying, if you don't want to take these books, if you don't want to buy these books, sign your name as you leave, as you exit the auditorium. I thought he was very smart and shrewd. One by one, they started leaving the auditorium. Not a single person signed the book, which means 350 assembled. All of them agreed they will take the set of books and the hospital will deduct from their salary 5 dinars. After they left, I talked to the administrator. I said, sir, the books are not 5 dinars. We sell them for 3.5. He said, Zakaria, I don't want to hear that. I said 5, you're going to get 5. I said, I can't do it. The publishing secretary will not agree. We're supposed to sell for 3.5. He said, tell them you sold them for 3.5 and you take the 1.5. And we're talking about a lot of money. At that time, 3 or 5 dinars was equivalent to almost $200 today, because dinar at that time was $4 to $5 in exchange. So he convinced us it's done. So he started asking questions. Where are the books? I said, at the border. We left them at the border. How are you getting the books? I said, we have no way of doing it except tomorrow. The Minister of Health had already authorized a vehicle for us. He asked me, do you know how to drive? I said, no. He said, then I'll authorize a chauffeur and a truck or a car to take you to the border so you can bring the books to the hospital. So we had a chauffeur and we have a car. I said, tomorrow we're going to the border and bring the books. He said, okay, it's all right. As long as we get them tomorrow or after tomorrow, it doesn't make a difference. He said, I'll write you a check. I said, I can't take a check. He said, and why? I said, I don't have an account. I don't have a bank account. He said, so you want cash? I said, yes, please. So he said, okay. So he sent his secretary to the closest bank to bring the total amount for all the books in cash. And when he came back, he calculated the amount and gave us in cash, not in check, the total amount of 300 sets of books. And then he had an envelope. And he said, this is the price of the books. I said, yes. Do you want to count them? I said, no, they're already counted. So he said, and I have something else, this envelope. So he gave it to me and said, you can open it. So I opened it. And there in the envelope were 200 dinars. 100 dinars at that time was enough tuition for a year at Middle East College. I said, so what is this? He said, this is a gift from the hospital to each one of you. You don't give them to Middle East Publishing House. This is a gift from me and the hospital to help you to pay for your tuition. I said, that's a lot of money. We're getting half of the amount he gave us. Plus he gave us a dinar and a half over the price of the books. He said, doesn't make a difference. The books are different than that. This is from me and the hospital for you. We were speechless. We didn't know. I mean, it was almost like a fairy tale. We were not believing what we're hearing. But we were grateful. So we left him. We thanked him many times. He said, I'll wait for you tomorrow to bring the books. So we went home. I went to the hotel. We spent the night. Early in the morning the following day, we got up. 8 o'clock, we went to the front of the hotel. There was the chauffeur and the truck, had a truck, not a car, that will take us to the border, authorized by the Minister of Health. He drove 2 hours. We arrived at the border. And I asked for the supervisor because my agreement was with the supervisor. He showed up. He said, started laughing. So I said, I have 3 visas. He said, he was started with, I'm joking with him. I said, no, look at the passport. So he looks at the passport, and each one of the passport had 3 visas. And he was in a shock and started shaking his head. I can't believe it. It's impossible. No way. No. I don't think, and he started calling the officers and said, come and see you guys. Come. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And he said, how did you do it? And I bought the answer. He said, no, don't answer because I'm not going to believe you. Anyway, he could not believe what he's seeing. And then he ended up by saying something I still remember. He said, these 2 young guys, people like us, Farouk and myself, these 2 young guys are either magicians or God is with them. Either they are magicians or God, Allah, is with them. He couldn't. He said, you guys are unbelievable. It never happened. It will never happen again. That you were able to get 3 visas in 24 hours. And then he added something else. He said, I want to buy a set of your books. And he asked the officers that had told us no visa, no entry. He asked them to also buy each one of them a set from us. So we were selling books to the officers at the border too, which makes it very difficult. Anyway, we left the border and we took the books, went to the hospital. We had gotten the money already, so it's just a matter of delivering it. I needed to talk to the administrator. I couldn't, but I left him a message with his secretary. We are short 100 sets because we don't have enough for the money that they had given us. And we told him that we will order another shipment, and then when it comes, we'll come back because we still have another hospital to go to. So the following day, we planned to go to the hospital. But meanwhile, we went back to the hotel, and then we called Middle East Press. And in Middle East Press, they couldn't believe what they're hearing from us, because instead of saying we arrived in Kuwait safely, we got the visas, we're asking them to send us another shipment. And when they heard What do you need? I said, shipment, another shipment. I need 200 more sets. What happened to the 300 you took? I said, we sold them. They couldn't believe that. But they finally came to the reality of it. They said, we'll have to have a board. So they had 3 sessions. That's a division. The division had to decide. I said, I need 300, 200 more sets, and it cannot send them by ship. They will come at the end of summer. I need them shipped to us by air. So they had to decide to ship the books air, which is very costly, but I told them we had the money already. We waited 6 days. On the 7th day, we received the second shipment. We delivered them to the hospitals, the Sabah Hospital and the Kuwait General Hospital. They also put orders, and we took the money pending delivery. The Review and Herald wrote a lengthy article about it. I think the pastor is going to show you some of these things. We didn't show them to you. We sold 577 set of books in about 13 days. It was a record. This is me and my friend Farouk. Enough to cover not 1 year tuition, but we had a scholarship for 3 years, the remaining 3 years of our education. And we had plenty of money. I deposited open a bank account, and I put 10,000 Lebanese liras. We took some of the money that was given to us as a gift, and we helped other fellow Egyptian students with their tuition. And we still had a lot of money left. You cannot tell me that this is not a miracle. You cannot convince me. It is a miracle. One of the greatest of the 4 miracles that I recorded in the book. God still in the business of miracles.
3 visas in 1 hour. And then you have the slide, first year at the Middle East College.
Yeah, that's what I did the first year, making cinema rolls from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. And I worked during the day in the workshop. That's the first year. This is the ID card that they gave us to enter Kuwait with it, that we are basically working for the Middle East Publishing House. This is our passport that we use to enter Kuwait. It's 60 years old. Every time I go to Egypt, I showed them, and they said, you need to put that in the museum. And these are the visas that we got when we entered Kuwait. And this is the building for Middle East Press, which is the publishing house in Arabic, with a bag. The bag that my friend is holding was full of cash. We got everything in cash. And this is an article that appeared in the Review and Herald about us.
Zach, unbelievable story. And I'm not surprised why you have been such a strong champion of Christian education, and specifically Adventist education. I know that even the books that people received free of cost. I just want to remind you folks that Zach, when he gave at least the first book, we got it for free, but there inside there was a letter from Zach saying, if you like the book, send your donation to the Windsor Adventist Elementary School. So even today, Zach is a champion of Adventist school and Adventist education. And even now he's helping our Adventist school here in Canada and beyond. So Zach, thank you. This is one unbelievable story. That there's definitely, it reminds me of this beautiful saying, extraordinary nobody. From the point of view of the world, you were nobody. You were just young people, young students, literally challenging the entire government, the entire, you can say, establishment. And yet you did it in such a way that even the governing officials became literally your friends, best friends. So listen,
Yes.
let me ask you this, because I know time is, especially for you, is very late. So Zach and Esther, you being Egyptian, tell us, where is the real Mount Sinai? Okay, before we go to sleep, you tell us where is the real Mount Sinai, okay? And then we can sleep peacefully, all of us.
Exactly what I wanted to ask.
It is not in Saudi Arabia, as they say.
Right?
It cannot be in Saudi Arabia, as they're trying to say now, because the Bible makes it very clear that they were still in Egypt. They were in Sinai. And it mentions the wilderness of Egypt. It does not say Sinai. It says the wilderness of Egypt, and that's a term used by ancient Egyptians to refer to Sinai. So basically, they crossed the Red Sea and they went to the wilderness of Egypt. The Bible says wilderness of Egypt, which means they're still in part of Egypt. They didn't leave Egypt, actually. And I said that in the book that I forwarded to you. I spent about 2-4 pages about it. When the Hebrews left Goshen, which is the Delta, they didn't leave Egypt. They just moved from one region to another. And for 40 years, they were still in Egypt. But the Egyptians did not follow them. They did not attempt to take them back. They could have gone there and brought them back as slaves. But the account says that they were happy to see them go. It mentions there. They gave them even gifts. Just go. And as a result, they didn't attempt to bring them back. So when they speak about Moses going up the mountain, it has to be part of Egypt and not another country.
Okay,
That's a brief.
yeah, well, folks, there is a little foretaste of how you can spend time with Zach and Esther. And you can, I tell you.
I do have a question. I do have a question.
Oh, yeah, Domingo, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, by the way. It was
You're
quite
welcome for the.
inspiration for all of us. Thank you for doing that. My question is related to food. Like, what is the typical food for Egypt, the Egyptian food? And do you, whether you or Esther, do you teach how to make Egyptian food, or how that works?
Esther is the cook. we eat Egyptian food, right?
Well, I didn't know how to cook when I got married, and we got married here. So when I cook Egyptian food, it might not be the authentic. It is what my memory of the taste would have been. More or less.
More or less, and most of the Egyptian basic food, the common people, is semi-vegetarian. It's almost close to what you say an Indian
or
cuisine,
Mediterranean.
or Mediterranean. So we eat a lot of
olive oil and olives and cheeses and like Italian and Greek stuff, you know, like it is, we eat a lot of beans. We have a green leaf that is very, like, one of the basic dishes in Egypt. It's called malokhia. It's made into a soup, usually with a broth, chicken or
it's rich with iron. Called soloya in the Philippines and part of the Far East. They call it soloya. We call it malokhia. It's a semi It's a semi-vegetarian diet. Less meat, more vegetables and fruits. That's what they can afford. Meat is very expensive in Egypt.
And
so-
legumes,
a lot of legumes, yes. It's a good question.
Perfect. I take that. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person already. You will have,
Thank
seems
you.
like we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Thank you. Thank you.
Zach, I want to thank you especially for tonight, because your story brought tears to my eyes. I remember when
Oh, thank you.
when I came into Canada. It's a long story. I don't have time here, but I experienced some of the very similar miracles, and I know exactly how it feels and how it is. So we're praying for you that God would continue to bless you in your ministry. But here is well, it's not really the same question, but now that you already told us, okay, Mount Sinai, it is in Egypt, but can you be a little bit more precise?
It is a combination. I'm interested. Most of my books, especially the one I just finished writing, is to really trace the proper route of the Hebrews since they left Pi Ramses, which is in the Delta.
Yep.
The Bible gives a lot of details, but not complete. Up to the crossing of the Red Sea and 3 months, there are names given, and we can trace them. For example, when they came to a place where there is no water, on the geography of Egypt, if you look at Sinai, you find that the distance from the sea, which is the now part of the canal, Suez Canal, 3 days walking brings you to a spring. There is a spring, and the spring is still named Ayun Musa. Musa is Moses in Arabic, and Ayun means springs or eyes. So the Bedouins that are living in the area, they still know that area as the springs of Moses. So it shows that the route that we believe they took has some, you can trace it to geographical areas. But after that, yes, right there, you can see Ayun Musa. When you cross he's trying to show Moses Spring. They say Ayun in Arabic. Medhat, can you read that? It says Ayun Musa in Arabic, Moses Spring.
Yes.
It never changed, by the way. I want an old map. It goes ages, still it's called Ayun Musa, which means that's how when they crossed came to that, and that's where they have the spring when Moses died. Then it gives you other areas, stations on the way. Bedouins still trace the way. The only thing that we don't have exact information is the peak, the mountain peak. Which one is a speculation. The one we use today, which I climbed a few times, is really tradition. But no historical base to it that this is the peak. It could be one of the others to the left or to the right, but the area where they rested is called in Arabic still Wadi al-Raha in Arabic. That area geographically is called Wadi al-Raha till now, which means the valley of rest. That's where they rested. And if you climb the mountain there, you could see that this is the only area in that whole area where you find area for camping. It's right there where it says, still called Wadi al-Raha. But what they're
This
saying
is
now that,
Jebel Musa.
yeah, Jebel Musa. This is also called Jebel Musa in Arabic till now, the Mount of Moses. So these are all traditions, and they never changed. No attempt to find them somewhere else. The stuff that they're talking about is the remains of ships in the Red Sea, down way where Saudi Arabia is, and they think that these are, you know, the traces of what happens when the Egyptians followed the. So it's traditions again. But I do believe that it is in Sinai and not in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And folks, we have to say goodbye because I know we kind of reached a new record, and I'm so glad there's so much interest, obviously. So Zach,
I want to thank everyone that is in attendance tonight. It is a joy to be a member of this family.